third attempt to try this video. First time it didn't upload for some reason, and then the second time I got no audio. First off, I'm going to start off with that I probably won't be doing predictions for UFC 137. What will happen is a friend of mine is going to do her picks and upload them onto my account because we're interested to see how many views she'll get, basically. I'm trying to get her to actually film it, but I suspect she won't. I think you'll probably get kind of a slideshow of this fighter versus this fighter, and this is why I think they'll win. So leave your thoughts below on both the card, what I have to say, and what you would like to see with that video. And I'll try and convince her to do what you guys want. Barring, of course, like she's not getting naked on camera and so on. That won't work with YouTube anyways. Someone's going to suggest that, I swear. Here we go. So, UFC 136. Where was this one? This one was in Texas, correct? Yes, Houston, Texas. Good card on paper. Maybe didn't quite deliver to the level that it had on paper, but it delivered some good fights. It didn't deliver a lot of boringness. It didn't deliver a lot of stupidity. Well, in the ring. We'll get to the out of the ring. Cage, I suppose. I still like the word ring. It just sounds more legitimate. Anyways, Mike Macenzio, Steve Cantwell. Got this one wrong. I thought Cantwell would win with his better stand-up, his theoretically better ground game. Well, Macenzio had the wrestling advantage. I thought that Cantwell would take this. Enough of the recap. Now let's get on to the actual fight. Cantwell, for the first 2 rounds, kept it standing and somehow still lost the second round to Mike Macenzio just repetitively throwing left hands. Steve, you're an exciting fighter. I enjoy watching you fight. You're young enough, but it's time probably for the UFC to cut you. You've lost 4 in a row to Luis Kane, Brian Stann, Cyril Diabate, Mike Macenzio. And that should spell a firing. It should have spelled a firing for Dan Hardy too, but that didn't happen, so maybe he'll get another fight. But that's my thought. As for who Macenzio should fight after this one, I don't care. It sounds harsh, and it's not generally my style, but Mike Macenzio just doesn't bring a lot to the UFC middleweight division. He's a good wrestler. He has a pretty solid ground game. He has pretty bad stand-up, though. Even though he outstruck Cantwell in this fight, it's not very good. Like I said, he threw that left hand repetitively. It seemed like incapable of throwing the right. And, ugh. And the fact is that there are much better wrestlers than him in the middleweight division, the likes of Chris Weidman, the likes of Aaron Simpson, the likes of Chael Sonnen, Yushin Okami, etc., Mark Munoz. And there's, I just don't see where he fits, really, with his skill set. Aaron Simpson, Eric Schaefer. Aaron Simpson's striking looked a lot more fluid in this fight. He threw a lot more combinations, which is something that he'd been somewhat guilty of in the past, maybe not doing. Throwing more one strike, one strike, one strike, instead of thinking about how they go together. And he did it in this fight. Didn't really he showed off his defensive wrestling a little bit, but Schaefer, excuse me, sorry, I seem to have the hiccups or something. Schaefer, not a very good fighter in general. From a UFC standpoint, man would kick my ass, probably anyone who's watching this video's ass. But from a UFC standpoint, Eric Schaefer has the ground game, but doesn't really have the wrestling, doesn't really have the stand-up, and that's a recipe for disaster. He's been trying to improve his stand-up, but it doesn't seem to be working out. What's next for Simpson? I kind of want to see him versus Chris Weidman. Some people will know why. Some people won't know why. And we'll continue on here. Darren Elkins, Zanti Kwan. My second loss of the night. I picked Kwan. Not a good idea, if I'm being honest. Elkins just... Kwan was too willing to basically try to pull guard with what was kind of a modified guillotine, and it didn't work for a tap out, and it resulted in him being on bottom. Elkins landing some shots. Elkins got his back a couple times. The only thing disappointing for Elkins is he should have finished this fight and didn't, but he gets a win. It's a key win for him because even though he beat Omagawa, he really didn't. What's next for Elkins? Don't know. He's not the most impressive fighter. He's a reasonably good wrestler, but his ground game and striking seem just very rudimentary. And at 145, I just don't see that being enough. He'll get another fight. I don't particularly care who it's against. Someone who can out-wrestle him might be a good idea, because then we might see a little bit more. Stipe Miocic versus Joey Beltran. Stipe showed some strengths, showed some weaknesses in this fight. Strengths would be standards reasonably, for a heavyweight, reasonably technical, reasonably fast, reasonable power. I mean, he had Beltran wincing, which is something we really hadn't seen before. Pretty good wrestling. Now on the dark side, control was not very good. Beltran easily was getting out from under him. Cardio seems a bit of an issue. He looked like he was gassing out in the second round. Came out in the third round, looked okay. So not a huge problem, but needs improvement. And finally, his striking defense seems to require some improvement. When Beltran was able to get in close, he was able to connect with a number of flurries. But a pretty impressive debut. He didn't finish Joey Beltran, and people are going to be like, well, he didn't finish Joey Beltran. Who finishes Joey Beltran? And is one of the toughest heavyweights around. Let's see, has anyone ever finished? He was Kimura by Tony Lopez before coming to the UFC. That's the only time. So there you go. Next up, spike card, Anthony Pettis, Jeremy Stevens. We got a little bit more groundwork than I think probably anyone really wanted in this one. But reasonably exciting fight still. Not as exciting as, some other Stevens and Pettis fights. But you know what? I enjoyed this fight. I hope you enjoyed this fight. Pettis takes a split decision. Next up for Pettis, I was thinking Joe Lozon, who we'll get to. And for Miocic, John Madsen, for some reason, comes to mind as a guy who could be interesting. Next up, Demian Maia, George Santiago. Not the most exciting of fights, but not unexciting. Santiago managing to get the takedowns, managing to do pretty well on the feet. Really just a pretty bit, or Maia. If I said Santiago, I meant Maia. And really a huge setback for Santiago. He just didn't seem to have a lot of answers. And that's never a good thing when you've already lost one in a row. Should he fight again in the UFC? Most definitely. He is a very good fighter, but this is probably the least impressive Santiago we've ever seen. For Maia, Hasamar Paul Harris has been a dream fight of mine. Let's put it that way. Melvin Gillard, Joe Lozon, quick fight. The only finish on the card. Oh wait, no, I'm wrong. I forgot about Sun. I forgot about Edgar. Edgar's a fourth round stop, which I kind of don't really figure that as a finish a lot of the time. It's a finish in a title fight, but not in a regular fight. It's also very early in the morning. I apologize for rambling. So Lozon rocked him. Lozon talked him down. Lozon reneged choke. Lozon versus Pettis. Moving on, Leonard Garcia, Nam Pham. Nam Pham showing the more technical striking of the two. And Garcia, for the most part, trying to brawl. When Garcia got technical, he had actually a lot of success. And I wish he would do that more. That's what frustrates me about Leonard Garcia a lot of the time is you get these brawlers and they don't, really, they're really not able to do a lot more. Garcia is different in the fact that we've seen a technical striker out of Leonard Garcia, and we know he's very good on the ground. And he just refuses to use it, I guess. And he likes to brawl, and that's not a good thing for a fighter. Pham wins. As for who Pham should fight, no one really came to mind. Nam Pham is always a guy that I somewhat doubt his athleticism, explosiveness, and so on, more so than his skills. He's a very skilled fighter, but he doesn't seem to have the abilities. Hang on a sec. Come here. Ugh. Just because he bugged me. This is Rampage. He is a kitten, and we have taken him from my sister's cat's litter. You can sit here. I'm gonna have to wash my hands because I'm allergic to you. Anyways, this is the worst video I've ever done. Putting that right out there for you. Chael Sonnen and Brian Stann. Brian Stann unable to defend the wrestling of Chael Sonnen. Kind of like I thought. Did not expect him to get submitted though. Sonnen submitting someone is just confusing. It's happened before, but he has like they're against no names and people who are just not very good, or they're very rudimentary submissions. Continuing on, well, as for who's next for Sonnen, I would love the Anderson Silva 2 fight. That's all there is to it. Jose Aldo, I thought just showing some weaknesses in flooring at 150 or 145, that is speed, which is ironic because speed was his biggest weapon at 155 and power was his lacking thing. I think it's kind of almost flipped around now that he's gone down here. I think he can counter the wrestlers at 145. The issue is I'm not sure if he can deal with the strikers, and he really didn't deal terribly well with Aldo this fight. Not that he did terribly. He had moments of some solid showing, but I just don't think he'll ever win a title. And he can keep cutting down if he wants. I just don't think it's going to happen. Frankie Edgar, Gray Maynard, who's next for Aldo, Chad Mendes, really should get the title shot because he's been kind of butted back in line twice by both Mark Hominick and by Kenny Florian. So he should really get that title shot now. Moving on to the main event of the evening, Frankie Edgar, Gray Maynard, the trilogy. Gray Maynard, it kind of looked like the second fight all over again. Gray Maynard comes out, has a phenomenal first round. He hurts Edgar. He has Edgar rocked. He can't finish Edgar. And then it just goes downhill. Edgar turns it around in the second, third, and fourth round. Gets it going. Starts out landing Maynard. Just doing a good, generally very good job. Clips him in the fourth, puts him down, and finishes the fight. So Edgar finally gets his win over Maynard. Should there be a fourth fight? Maybe, but not an immediate rematch, because I want Edgar Melendez. That's all for now. Again, let me know what you would think about it for the next video, what you thought of this card, what you thought of my picks, etc. Anything MMA, go for it.